poplars, the common blackbird hops. Shopping trolley nights vandalised. Difficult times, magnificent skies. Difficult times, silver linings. It's indifferent outside.
Hello and welcome to France 24's weekly music show. I'm Marjorie Hash and my guest this week is rapper and vocalist and multi-instrumentalist Mike Skinner, aka the mastermind behind The Streets. His writing has in the past been compared to that of Ray Davies from The Kinks thanks to his uniquely British voice and depiction of his generation's daily life. All this to a backdrop of UK garage beats and breaks. His second album, 2004's A Grand Don't Come for Free, made him a household name and mainstream famous. Now, he initially put The Streets on a wee break in 2011, but now he's properly back with a new record entitled None of Us Are Getting Out of This Life Alive. Hello, Mike. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you today? How have things been in lockdown?
I've been releasing this album in lockdown, so we were really unlucky to begin with. But as the lockdown went on, I realised that some things are actually more straightforward. And if you can get past the harder stuff, like videos are very hard in lockdown. It's a very unique time for everyone, but it's especially unique, I think, if you're releasing the first album in 10 years.
You're actually promoting this as a mixtape, and I've noticed that actually more and more dance or hip-hop artists are releasing mixtapes as opposed to albums. Is that just a coincidence? Can you tell us why?
Well, I think it's as much for my benefit, really, because it is just an album, really, but it wouldn't have sounded the way it does if I hadn't have told myself it was a mixtape. Obviously, there's collaboration on every song, and also just not complicating things too much, not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Well, you've got some amazing guests on this new release, which shows how plugged in you still are in terms of UK rappers and singers, from Miss Banks to Jimothy Lacoste, and you've also got Kevin Parker from Tame Impala and the Bristol punks that are Idols. How did you set about choosing your collaborations?
It was just slightly organised chaos, really. Kevin Parker came really because we did a lot of festivals with Tame Impala last summer. We did like Germany, all over Europe, Australia. So that was, I guess, quite organic. But then with a lot of the rappers, I know a lot of rappers. I know the ones that I like. That just tended to happen through Instagram, I guess. And some of them I'm just really good friends with. But as to whether they were going to want to work with me, that's a completely other thing. Between asking them and getting the finished song was about 2 years of a roller coaster ride.
Well, first single with Kevin Parker here on France 24.
Call and call my phone thinking I'm doing nothing better. I'm just waiting for it to stop so I can use it again. Love isn't a riddle, love isn't made to be hard. You know I'd give you my kidney, just don't ever take my charger. So dance like no one is awkward, to music listen too lit. You'd worry less about what they thought if you knew how little they did. You call and call my phone thinking I'm doing nothing.
And it's really nice to hear you still have your trademark way of musing on relationships. And one thing I noticed on this track and a number of others is the important role mobile phones and social media play in terms of human interaction. Do you ever harbour a certain nostalgia for pre-smartphone days?
I think as long as you've got self-control, which I've had to learn, I think phones make your life better. They make all our lives better, or they wouldn't be so popular. But I've always tried to tell stories about the life that's around me, because I feel like you can get the emotion more if you're describing the things that are happening rather than trying to describe abstract emotions. There's so much mobile phone type stuff, because I just think that if we're honest, that's where the soap opera of life is happening in 2020. It happens in conversations on WhatsApp.
Now, your track Conspiracy Freestyle also seems very relevant today. You evoke the idea that history is often a pack of lies that have been agreed on by men and their decision-making wives. And this comes, interestingly enough, just a few weeks after, in a number of countries across the world, people have suddenly woken up to what their history and the streets and statues around them were based on. Was that a coincidence, or was that something you were musing on before?
It's a total coincidence. I finished the album just before our lockdown, so I guess there was a mood of COVID-19. There was a COVID-19 vibe when I finished it, but absolutely no. When I was writing it, no idea what was going to happen. Even the name of the album, None of Us Are Getting Out of This Life Alive, that song is the song that I did with Idols, and it felt like something kind of about the environment maybe, but also just something quite fun and existential.
Touring is rather complicated at the minute, but are you eager to take this record on the road?
We're doing like a drive-in tour in the UK. I'm going to have to not crowd surf that, or maybe bonnet surf. Maybe I could bonnet surf.
Well, let's hope your tour takes you to France at some point, or anywhere else in the world, of course, because we go out worldwide. How about we check out some of the new releases that have just dropped? And this one is from British garage and deep house brothers Disclosure. Their third studio album is set to be released later this summer, but they've just released this track.
Are you mad? Must be out of your mind. You look so sad, have a spliff, get high, she bad. Yeah, she racking up 10 lines. Come and take a walk on the wild side. And I beg nobody fucking up my vibe. Ain't nobody take the bop on my stride. And a man don't dance, got too much pride. When we raise our glass, it got gloss in the eye. Eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Don't fuck up my high. Higher tail with your wire silk. Dress on, looking like a mademoiselle. Say you're pretty and pink and I tickle you pink. Like, can I have a lick of your caramel? Tell your boyfriend gonna be home late. Spend your money like a tax rebate. You was there standing all night. Your heartbeat matching with the lights.
Disclosure there with a certain Slow Tie. Now, Mike, I heard that you'd spent time in the studio with Slow Tie, who's one of the UK's hottest rappers. He's been so for the last few years. I know he didn't make the cut for this album, but can you tell us a bit about working with him?
I know quite a few people that are in his team. It was actually the song that turned into the Tame Impala one, Call My Phone. That was the one we were talking about doing something with. I think it was a bit deep. It was a bit like emotional. Maybe that's not where Slow Tie is at the moment.
Well, moving on from artists who were perhaps influenced by the streets to one that perhaps influenced you, Mike Skinner. Massive Attack are back with a new EP entitled Utopia, and it features artists like Saul Williams, Young Fathers, Algiers, as well as various academics, and is in fact a sonic and visual dialogue around global issues such as climate emergency, tax haven extraction, and universal basic income. Let's check out the track with Algiers.
The future we choose should be one of resilience, starting with aligning the food system to the 4 principles set out by the FAO: availability, access, utilization, and stability.
And And that's it for this week's music show on France 24. The latest news headlines are coming up in just a moment, so stay tuned. Special thanks to Mike Skinner for being my guest this week. The Streets' new album is out and available, so go check it out. And we're going to wrap up the show with Jeanne Haddad, a French jazz singer turned electro pop star who has just released a new airy EP where she sings for the first time in her native tongue. Now, personally, I'm still a bit on the fence about it. It's a bit too soft for me, but do let me know what you think about it via Encore's social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And remember, you can find all our latest culture news on france24.com.